The story you are about to hear begins with a crime. Before sunrise on Friday, October 13th, 1307, royal officers moved quietly through the streets of France carrying sealed orders that cannot be opened until the exact same moment. Inside monasteries, castles, and commanderies, hundreds of men slept peacefully, unaware that history was about to remember this morning forever. They were not rebels. They were not invading armies. For nearly 2 centuries, they had protected pilgrims, fought on distant battlefields, advised kings, and sworn their lives to God. Yet before the church bells finished ringing at dawn, doors were forced open, swords were drawn, and one of the most respected brotherhoods in medieval Europe was placed under arrest. The accusations were shocking: heresy, blasphemy, secret ceremonies, hidden knowledge. The king expected to break the order forever, and many believed to seize a fortune beyond imagination. But when the arrests were over, one question remained. Where was the treasure? Where were the documents? Where were the secrets that generations believed these warrior monks had guarded with their lives? More than 700 years have passed since that extraordinary morning, and historians, archaeologists, explorers, and storytellers are still searching for answers. Some believe the truth lies beneath the ancient stones of Jerusalem. Others follow forgotten castles in France, hidden commanderies in Portugal, or mountain valleys in Switzerland where local traditions still whisper that not every Templar vanished. Some search for gold. Others search for sacred relics. Still others believe the greatest treasure was never made of gold at all. But before we follow those trails, we must answer a far more important question. Who were these men that inspired such loyalty from ordinary people, such trust from kings, and such fear that one of the most powerful monarchs in Europe decided they had to disappear? To understand the mystery, we must first meet the men behind the legend. We must leave behind our modern world and return to a time when faith could move nations, when a journey to Jerusalem might cost you your life, and when 9 unknown knights made a promise that would echo through the centuries. Explorer, our investigation begins not with treasure, but with courage. Because until we understand why the Knights Templar became legends, we can never hope to understand why their mystery refuses to die. The road to Jerusalem was never meant for the faint of heart. Long before the first Templar raised his sword, the journey itself had already claimed countless lives. Across Europe, men, women, and children left everything they knew behind, believing that if they could only reach the holy city, their pilgrimage would become one of the greatest acts of faith they would ever perform. Some walked for months, others for more than a year. They crossed frozen mountain passes, scorching valleys, unfamiliar kingdoms, and roads where the next bend could hide robbers, mercenaries, or desperate men willing to kill for a handful of coins. Medieval chronicles describe attacks on pilgrims often enough that the danger was accepted as part of the journey. Imagine one such caravan, representative of many that traveled these roads. A grandfather leans heavily on a wooden staff, a young mother carries her sleeping child, and several strangers have become friends simply because survival is easier together than alone. As sunset paints the hills in fading gold, fear quietly settles over the travelers. No one speaks of it, but everyone feels it. Then, in the distance, horsemen appear. For a heartbeat, every pilgrim prepares for the worst. Instead, white mantles catch the evening light. Bright red crosses stand out against the dust. Relief spreads through the caravan before a single word is spoken. The Knights Templar have arrived. This scene is a reconstruction, but it reflects the very mission for which the order was created. Around the year 1119, a small band of knights led by Hugues de Payens pledged to defend pilgrims traveling to and from Jerusalem. They were not seeking a kingdom of their own. They took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, embracing a life where faith demanded action rather than comfort. Soon their courage became known throughout the Crusader states. Travelers began telling stories of disciplined horsemen who appeared when danger seemed closest, escorting frightened pilgrims across the final miles to Jerusalem. Their reputation spread not through grand proclamations, but through thousands of grateful voices returning home across Europe. A father told his village that his family had reached the holy city because unknown knights had guarded them through the night. A merchant spoke of warriors who refused payment for protection. A widow remembered the men who buried her husband with dignity after bandits attacked their caravan. One story became 10. 10 became hundreds. Before long, the name Knights Templar stood for something greater than military strength. It became a symbol of trust. Kings heard those stories. Popes heard them. Noble families heard them. Donations began arriving from every corner of Europe: land, vineyards, mills, castles, and fortunes, not because the Templars demanded wealth, but because people believed they had found a brotherhood worthy of supporting. Yet while Europe admired the courage of these warrior monks, almost no one noticed where they had been invited to live. Their headquarters stood upon one of the most sacred and mysterious places on earth, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It was there, above ancient foundations that had already witnessed thousands of years of history, that the next chapter of our investigation quietly began, and where the first whispers of an enduring mystery were born. History is filled with remarkable armies, fearless warriors, and brilliant commanders. Yet the rise of the Knights Templar remains one of the most extraordinary transformations the medieval world had ever witnessed. When Hugues de Payens and his companions first pledged themselves to the protection of pilgrims, they possessed little more than their faith, their horses, and an unwavering commitment to their mission. No one looking upon those first brothers could have imagined that within a few generations they would become advisors to kings, guardians of immense estates, and one of the most respected institutions in Christendom. The question is, how? The answer was never simply their skill with a sword. It was trust. Every man who entered the order surrendered his personal ambitions. His horse was no longer his own. His armor belonged to the brotherhood. His wealth, if he had any, was given up. Every knight ate together, prayed together, trained together, and accepted that he might die protecting people whose names he would never know. Imagine a young noble arriving at a Templar commandery to begin his new life. The sword at his side is finely crafted, his cloak still carries the colors of his family, and the future before him could have led to wealth or political influence. Instead, he kneels before the brothers and surrenders everything. His family name no longer defines him. His possessions no longer belong to him. His life is now measured by service, discipline, and sacrifice. Scenes like this unfolded across Europe as generation after generation chose duty over comfort. That choice inspired confidence unlike anything money could buy. Soon, pilgrims trusted the Templars with their lives, merchants trusted them with valuable cargo, nobles entrusted them with estates, and rulers entrusted them with matters of extraordinary importance. Even the Church recognized the uniqueness of the order. Supported by influential figures such as Bernard of Clairvaux and granted remarkable privileges by the papacy, the Knights Templar answered directly to the Pope rather than to local lords, giving them an independence few organizations enjoyed. Their commanderies spread across Europe like a network of disciplined outposts, connected by a common purpose. They managed farms, vineyards, workshops, ports, and castles with remarkable efficiency, allowing resources from distant lands to support pilgrims and defend the Holy Land. They also developed practical financial systems that allowed travelers to deposit funds in one place and recover them safely elsewhere, reducing the danger of carrying gold across dangerous roads. To medieval Europe, this was more than convenience. It was revolutionary. Yet as the order grew stronger, another kind of wealth surrounded them, one impossible to measure in silver or gold. It was the wealth of reputation. Mothers trusted them with their children. Kings trusted them with their secrets. Popes trusted them with missions that demanded absolute loyalty. Once people believe an organization is worthy of protecting lives, it is only a small step before stories begin suggesting it was also entrusted with protecting humanity's greatest treasures. And nowhere could such stories grow more naturally than upon the ancient stones of the Temple Mount, where history, faith, and mystery had already been intertwined for thousands of years. Whether the Knights Templar discovered anything beneath those sacred foundations remains unknown. Yet from that silence, a question emerged that has echoed across 9 centuries. What, if anything, were these extraordinary men truly guarding? The reputation of the Knights Templar was not built in a single battle or by one remarkable leader. It was earned year after year, campaign after campaign, through discipline that few medieval armies could equal. When kingdoms argued, the Templars remained focused on their mission. When rulers came and went, they continued protecting pilgrims, maintaining fortresses, and strengthening the fragile Christian states of the Holy Land. Their white mantles became recognized from the walls of Jerusalem to the castles of Europe, and for many people they represented something rare in the medieval world, an organization whose loyalty could not easily be bought. Yet, history has a way of testing even the strongest institutions. In 1187, the balance of power shifted dramatically when the great Muslim commander Saladin defeated the Crusader army at the Battle of Hattin. Many Templars fought and died in that disastrous campaign, and within months Jerusalem itself was lost. For Europe, the news was devastating. The city that had inspired generations of pilgrims had fallen, and the order that had devoted its life to protecting the Holy Land suddenly faced a question no one had imagined. If Jerusalem was no longer under Christian rule, what would become of the Knights Templar? They adapted as soldiers always do. Their headquarters moved, their castles continued to defend the remaining Crusader territories, and new crusades were launched in the hope of recovering what had been lost. But with every passing decade, the dream of permanently reclaiming Jerusalem grew more distant. When the last major Crusader stronghold at Acre fell in 1291, the military purpose that had given birth to the Templars seemed to disappear with it. They remained wealthy. They remained organized. They still possessed estates across Europe and answered directly to the Pope. Yet many rulers quietly began asking a dangerous question. If there was no longer a Christian kingdom in the Holy Land to defend, why did the Knights Templar still possess such enormous influence? It is often at moments like these that history becomes fertile ground for rumor. Some people admire the order more than ever, believing its members had sacrificed everything for a cause greater than themselves. Others looked upon their castles, their resources, and their independence with growing suspicion. Living upon the Temple Mount years earlier had already inspired whispers that the brothers had discovered something hidden beneath Jerusalem's ancient foundations. Those whispers did not fade after the loss of the Holy Land. They became stronger. Stories spread from one region to another. Some claimed the Templars had recovered sacred relics before Jerusalem fell. Others believed they carried ancient manuscripts whose contents were known only to a handful of trusted brothers. There were even traditions suggesting that certain secrets had been quietly removed from the Holy Land long before the final battles, hidden where no invading army could ever reach them. Contemporary evidence does not confirm these stories, and historians rightly distinguish them from later traditions. Yet one fact cannot be ignored. Wherever the Knights Templar established themselves, mysteries seemed to follow. Whether those mysteries grew from remarkable deeds, remarkable silence, or remarkable imagination is a question that still challenges us today. And while the world debated who the Templars had become, one man was already deciding what he intended to do about them. His name was Philip IV of France, and history was about to change forever. King Philip IV of France had every reason to appear confident. He ruled one of the most powerful kingdoms in Europe, commanded armies, and possessed authority that few monarchs could challenge. Yet behind the splendor of the royal court lay a dangerous reality. Years of war had drained the treasury, political struggles had weakened alliances, and the king desperately needed money to strengthen his crown. The Knights Templar, however, stood beyond his direct control. They answered not to the French throne, but to the Pope. They owned castles, farmland, ports, workshops, and commanderies across Europe. They safeguarded wealth for nobles and pilgrims alike, and their reputation for honesty had become one of their greatest assets. To a king burdened by debt, they represented something both valuable and frustrating, an immensely respected institution that could not easily be commanded. Historians continue to debate Philip's true motives. Some believe financial pressure played a decisive role. Others point to politics, the struggle for authority between crown and papacy, or the king's determination to eliminate any independent power within his kingdom. Whatever his reasoning, one fact is beyond dispute. He prepared his move with extraordinary secrecy. Across France, sealed letters were delivered to royal officials with one strict instruction. They were not to be opened until the same appointed hour. Imagine the tension on that October night. Messengers ride through darkness carrying orders they themselves cannot read. Monasteries sleep peacefully behind stone walls. In lonely commanderies, Templar brothers complete their evening prayers exactly as they had done countless times before, believing tomorrow will be no different from yesterday. They have no idea that history is already moving toward them. Then dawn breaks. Wax seals are broken. The orders are read. Royal officers mount their horses. Gates are surrounded. Heavy fists strike ancient wooden doors. Inside one chapel, as a historically plausible reconstruction, a brother finishes the final words of a morning prayer. He hears footsteps in the courtyard and smiles, expecting another group of weary pilgrims seeking shelter before continuing toward the coast. Instead, armed soldiers enter carrying the king's warrant. The silence that follows is more powerful than any battle. Across the kingdom, hundreds of Templars are arrested almost simultaneously. The charges are staggering: heresy, blasphemy, secret initiation ceremonies, and denying Christ. Medieval investigations often relied on torture, and many confessions were obtained under unbearable suffering. Modern historians therefore approach those confessions with great caution, recognizing that statements extracted in such circumstances cannot automatically be accepted as reliable evidence. Yet while interrogations continued, another question quietly emerged, one that has never truly gone away. If the king expected to seize one of the wealthiest and best organized orders in Christendom, where was its greatest treasure? Inventories recorded lands, buildings, horses, and ordinary possessions, but no discovery matched the immense fortunes later legends claimed the Templars possessed. It was as though the most important chapter of the story had vanished before the soldiers ever arrived. Within months, rumors spread faster than facts. Some spoke of wagons leaving commanderies days before the arrests. Others claimed a small fleet sailed from the Atlantic coast under cover of darkness. No contemporary source confirms these dramatic escapes, yet the stories refuse to disappear because they tried to answer a question history itself had left unanswered. If something truly vanished before dawn on Friday, October 13th, 1307, what was it? Gold? Sacred relics? Hidden archives? Or a secret so valuable that generations would spend the next 700 years searching for it? Explorer, this is where history ends, and the world's greatest Templar mystery truly begins. The years that followed transformed the Knights Templar from a military order into one of history's greatest unsolved investigations. Their castles remained. Their churches still stood. Their names filled royal records, papal letters, and court proceedings. Yet the deeper people searched, the more questions they uncovered. The first mystery led back to Jerusalem itself. For nearly a decade, the Templars had lived upon the Temple Mount, one of the most sacred places on earth. Contemporary records tell us where they lived, but they say remarkably little about what they may have explored beneath the ancient complex. Into that silence grew centuries of speculation. Some believed the brothers discovered forgotten chambers. Others imagined ancient archives, sacred relics, or long-lost treasures hidden below the foundations. Archaeologists and historians caution that no contemporary evidence confirms such discoveries, yet the mystery has endured precisely because so much about the site's early medieval history remains incomplete. The second mystery concerned their wealth. Contrary to popular imagination, the Templars did not keep one enormous mountain of gold in a single, hidden vault. Their resources were spread across lands, farms, workshops, ships, and commanderies throughout Europe. Even so, later traditions insisted that something of immense importance disappeared before the arrests. Was it money, important records, or something whose value could never be measured in coins? The third mystery asks whether every Templar truly vanished. In Portugal, many former members entered the Order of Christ, preserving elements of the Templar tradition under royal approval. In Scotland, enduring legends tell of brothers escaping persecution, though definitive contemporary evidence remains elusive. In Switzerland, later traditions connected the discipline and financial reputation of the Templars with the mountain valleys, giving rise to stories that continue to inspire debate, even though historians have found no direct evidence that the order founded Swiss banking. Then comes perhaps the greatest mystery of all, the relics. Did the Templars ever guard the Holy Grail? Did they recover the Ark of the Covenant? Were they entrusted with fragments of the true cross or ancient manuscripts whose contents have since been lost? No reliable contemporary source confirms these extraordinary claims. Yet generation after generation continued asking the same questions because the Templars had earned something far more valuable than riches. They had earned trust. If medieval Europe believed anyone could safeguard humanity's most sacred treasures, it was the Brotherhood that had already proven it would risk everything for strangers on the road to Jerusalem. Then, just when it seemed the story could become no more extraordinary, another legend emerged from the flames themselves. It did not speak of treasure. It did not speak of hidden chambers. It spoke of justice. According to later medieval traditions, as the last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, faced execution in Paris, he issued words that would echo through the centuries. Some called it a prayer. Others called it a warning. History remembers it simply as the Templar's Curse. Whether those words were truly spoken exactly as later chroniclers described remains uncertain, but what happened in the months that followed would ensure that Europe never forgot them. Explorer. Sometimes the greatest mysteries are not buried beneath stone. Sometimes they are carried in the memories of generations who refuse to let a story die. On an island in the Seine River, in the heart of Paris, the final chapter of the Knights Templar unfolded before a silent crowd. It was March 18, 1314. After years of imprisonment, interrogations, and trials, Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, stood before the people he had once served. He had every opportunity to save himself by accepting the charges. Instead, according to contemporary accounts, he publicly declared the innocence of the order and withdrew earlier confessions that historians believe had been obtained under torture. For a medieval king, this was more than defiance. It was a direct challenge to the judgment that had destroyed one of Europe's most powerful brotherhoods. The sentence was immediate. Jacques de Molay was condemned to death and burned that very evening. Imagine the scene as a historically grounded reconstruction. The sun sinks behind the rooftops of Paris. Smoke rises into the cold evening sky. Soldiers stand in silence. Some people watch with satisfaction, others with uncertainty. Among the crowd are ordinary men and women who remember the stories told by returning pilgrims, stories of white-cloaked knights who had protected strangers on dangerous roads. They struggle to reconcile those memories with the accusations now echoing through the kingdom. As the flames rise, later medieval chroniclers tell us that Jacques de Molay called upon God to judge those responsible and summoned Pope Clement V and King Philip IV to answer before the highest court within a year. Whether he spoke those exact words can never be proven with certainty because the famous version of the curse appears most clearly in later sources rather than the earliest eyewitness accounts. Yet what happened afterward ensured that Europe would never forget the story. Pope Clement V died only weeks later. Before the year had ended, King Philip IV was also dead. In the years that followed, the direct male line of the Capetian dynasty unexpectedly came to an end. To many medieval people, these events were not random tragedies. They appeared to confirm that divine justice had answered the final prayer of a condemned man. Modern historians approach these events differently. Death, illness, and political instability were common in the medieval world, and no historical method can demonstrate that these events were connected by supernatural causes. Yet history is not only shaped by facts. It is also shaped by what people believe. The legend of the Templar's curse spread across Europe because it gave meaning to events that seemed extraordinary when viewed together. It transformed the destruction of the Knights Templar from a political trial into a story of justice, faith, and unanswered questions. And perhaps that is why the legend has endured for more than 7 centuries. It asks a timeless question that every generation answers differently. Can power silence the truth forever? Or does history, in its own time, always find a way to speak? As our investigation draws to a close, one remarkable truth remains. The castles still stand. The churches still welcome visitors. The roads once guarded by the Templars can still be walked today. The documents continue to be studied. Archaeologists continue to search. Historians continue to debate. And somewhere between the evidence we possess and the mysteries we have yet to solve, the legacy of the Knights Templar continues to ride across history, not as ghosts, but as one of humanity's greatest invitations to remain curious. Our investigation began before sunrise on a lonely road to Jerusalem, where frightened pilgrims searched for safety in a dangerous world. It ends more than 7 centuries later with a mystery that still refuses to fade. Along the way, we met a small brotherhood that chose sacrifice over comfort, discipline over glory, and service over personal ambition. We followed 9 unknown knights who became trusted by kings, respected by pilgrims, admired by allies, and even acknowledged by their enemies for their courage. We witnessed the rise of an order whose influence stretched across Europe, and we stood beside them as politics, fear, and ambition brought that remarkable chapter of history to a dramatic end. Yet perhaps the most extraordinary part of their story is not how they lived, nor even how they fell. It is that they continue to inspire questions nearly 1,000 years later. History gives us many answers. We know who founded the order. We know where they lived. We know how they served, how they fought, and how they were arrested. We know that Jacques de Molay met his death in Paris, and we know that the political decisions surrounding the destruction of the order forever changed medieval Europe. But history also teaches humility. It reminds us that not every question has an answer waiting to be discovered. Some mysteries remain open because the evidence has been lost to time. Others endure because every generation sees them through new eyes. That is not a weakness of history. It is one of its greatest strengths. It reminds us that the past is not a closed book. It is an ongoing conversation between evidence, archaeology, tradition, and human curiosity. If there is one treasure the Knights Templar unquestionably left behind, it is not a chest of gold hidden beneath an ancient castle. It is a legacy of courage, discipline, faith, and service that has outlived kingdoms, wars, and centuries. Long after their banners disappeared from the battlefield, their story continued to inspire historians, explorers, archaeologists, writers, and ordinary people who simply wanted to understand a remarkable world that came before them. Whether the greatest mysteries surrounding the Templars are ever solved is almost secondary to the gift they leave us today. The desire to keep asking questions, to keep searching honestly, and to never stop learning. That is why Tilt and Chill exists. Not to tell you what to believe, not to turn legends into facts or facts into legends, but to open the door to history's greatest investigations with honesty, curiosity, and respect for the people who live them. If today's journey sparked your imagination, consider subscribing and becoming part of our growing community of explorers. Every investigation we create is an invitation to travel across time, to visit forgotten civilizations, mysterious castles, remarkable kings and queens, hidden underground cities, sacred landscapes, lost empires, and enduring legends that continue to shape our understanding of humanity. Our goal is simple: to leave you a little wiser, a little more curious, and a little more amazed by the world than when you press play. Before you leave, we'd love to hear from you. Which mystery fascinates you most? Was it the hidden chambers beneath the Temple Mount, the missing wealth, the sacred relics, the fate of the surviving brothers, or the legend of Jacques de Molay's final words? Share your thoughts in the comments, because some of the greatest discoveries begin with thoughtful conversations between curious people. Until our next investigation, keep your curiosity alive. Seek the evidence. Respect the past. Listen to the stories that generations have preserved, while never forgetting to ask thoughtful questions. The world is far more extraordinary than it first appears, and somewhere tonight another forgotten mystery is waiting patiently to be rediscovered. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We'll meet again on the next adventure, here on Tilt and Chill, where history is not just remembered, it is explored.